There is no central, individual, separate one within each one of these bodies. That one doesn't exist. That one never has existed, and there is never a possibility that it will exist. In the moment that this realization comes, it's accompanied by a clarity which is so clear, so intense, so powerful. A clarity that is experienced as an incredible, overwhelming feeling of love, not just for people, but for everything. As this love recognizes that everything that it is in love with is its own being manifesting, it can no longer maintain the outer manifestation. The imagined separate inner subject and the imagined separate outer object can no longer be maintained. The realization that there is no duality no longer allows the maintenance of the projection that you call the world, the universe. In that moment, you return consciously to rest as the source. But it does so knowingly, consciously.
Can you explain what do you mean when you say that the world is your reflection, is your mirror?
Everything that we see in our world is the way we've constructed energy within ourselves. That energy appears in what we believe to be an outer reality, according to the way we think and the way we feel. Every object that we look at is part of an energy field that reflects, in a sense, the state of our consciousness. So, as within, so without. What we feel and think, what we identify with as personal thoughts and feelings, tend to be what stands out in our outer reality. So everything we are looking at, how we respond or react to it, is dependent on what we feel within ourselves and how we think about what we feel. Everything, therefore, is a reflection. Everything that we see right now as shape and colour and thought and feeling is a reflection of nothing. What is looking at those apparent separate objects is nothing. And this nothing is what we actually refer to when we use the word I. And it is this nothing that is creating everything. It's a reflection. The world is a reflection of nothing.
So this reflection is not personal.
Well, the I is not person. I is neither a person nor impersonal. In order for something to be impersonal, we would have to hold the concept of personal in consciousness. It's just I. It's not I from the point of view of somebody. It's simply I. It's not personal at all.
So when in certain spiritual circles one says, I did manifest that, I did create that, is it correct? Because it sounds as if there is personal creations separated from each other.
Well, if we rest in the realization that I is utterly impersonal, there's nothing by which you can describe that I, then it would be correct to say that I is what is creating everything. The moment we say I am creating everything, we personalize it. And from the point of view of the person, which is totally imaginary, as there is no person present except as an idea, an image.
So, as long as this I believes to be a person, then what is created will look as if it was personal, isn't it?
It would appear that way, obviously. But when it identifies with the concept of being a person, it can only focus on one thing that it's selected out of the whole at a time and say, I create this, I am creating this. It's selecting, out of a whole flow of energy, one object and claiming to be the creator of that. When you bring the attention to rest fully in the awareness that is prior to everything and realize that that is the true I, well, your perception of the world obviously is going to be different when you realize that you are not actually a thing within the body called me. Nobody's ever found that. It does not actually exist except as one of the many concepts, one of the many images we hold about ourselves to be true, which are not true at all. When you look at the world from the me, the world appears to be out there, surrounding you, and you're somewhere in the body, although nobody will give you a definite where that me locates itself. When that drops away, it's very clear that the world, everything that surrounds the body, including the body, is taking place in you. You're the emptiness that everything is appearing in. So obviously there's going to be a totally different perception of the world. There's going to be a totally different way of looking at the world and watching how it functions.
From this perspective of the impersonal I, the sense of good and evil seems to fade out. This sometimes is taken by people that listen to this message as if there is an invitation to irresponsibility or not taking care of what is going on in the world. How do you reply to these people?
It's not possible from the viewpoint of the person to not interfere with the world. The person always identifies with one polarity or the other in any given situation. It needs that polarity, it needs to cling on to something in order to maintain its image of itself as a person. When the person is seen to be completely false and nothing more than an idea, an image, when that drops away, there is the ability to see things as they are without labelling them right or wrong. right or wrong would always be according to how the person sees the situation. If you take two bodies living from the point of view of the person, then one could look at the left polarity and one could look at the right, and they could both decide, well, this is actually right and this is actually right, according to how they've structured their personality. They could also switch. So what is right for number one changes, and he chooses the other polarity, and the other chooses the polarity that the other one originally held. So you can swap around the concept of good and bad. In itself, it's just something that you choose, in a sense, according to your image of yourself. When you rest in the true I, you rest in a state of witnessing, where you realise, in fact you see it very clearly, it's not an idea in the mind. You see that everything is always in balance, everything is always in harmony. The play of the left and the play of the right belong to the same pole. And if something is taking place, it has a polarity, it has a left and a right. If you choose one of them as good and bad, you're holding on to the sense of being a person. When the person has disappeared, it's not that you don't understand, it's that you see something much deeper than understanding, much, much deeper. And from there, what automatically takes place is compassion arises. You don't interfere. Also, because when you rest in the true self, you don't interfere, because you're already the one that's creating things exactly as they are right now.
And is not interfering, it doesn't mean not taking care.
Well, the very fact we use the word interfering means that we're seeing what's happening around the form as something that is not in our control already. The truth is, when you rest in your true self, when you rest in the I itself and not in the me, you're controlling everything. Everything is under your control. Everything is as it is.
So from this still point out of which you view the world, everything is already perfect, already.
Everything is already complete. Nothing is missing. Nothing is too much to the left or the right. The correct word would be everything is balanced. Everything is complete. Always. You know, Lao Tzu said that if you pluck a blade of grass, the whole universe shakes. I would agree with that, but I would also say the one complete action of the universe that is plucking the blade of grass. So everything is always complete. Everything is always balanced. Everything, therefore, is already as it is. Whether that's considered correct or incorrect is simply what is arising in that moment.
Some way, paradoxically, although everything, as you say, is complete in itself, it seems that there is a kind of evolution, so to say. Is this simply an illusion, or is it like that? What do you say about this apparent paradox?
Well, awakening is always present. What we call awakening is in a sense, the withdrawing of our attention from what we imagine ourselves to be to what is. Now, the only thing that we can say is beingness itself. When the attention comes away from that which beingness is creating and back to beingness itself, awakening takes place. Well, everything, the background of everything, is beingness. So the awakening to beingness is not dependent at all upon time, obviously, because beingness itself is timeless, and it's not dependent upon a particular action having to take place, because beingness itself is actionless. So there's just a shift of perception from object to subject. The subject is beingness itself. But having said that, that could take place, and obviously has taken place, in what we call time. It's not dependent upon evolution, but I would say now something is changing in the way the arrangement of consciousness itself is working, for sure. And I'm talking about my experience. More and more people are waking up. This is happening for sure. Whether that reaches a point of mass enlightenment is another story. We see the world in various ways when we live from the so-called personality, the ego. The one that rests behind the dream, watching the dream, is always I. So when I awakens to itself in a form, all it sees in the other forms is itself. So you could say that the world is enlightened by your enlightenment. The me is a total illusion. Me is the one that claims to be the doer of everything that is done. So when meditation takes place, or any method is practiced, it's done with the intention of getting to something that is actually already present. This is not an attainment. When you realise what you are, it's not the result of anything, obviously. And this is something that really needs to be understood. That which is permanent, always present, ever the same, and therefore, is clearly the truth, that which never changes, cannot be brought about by an activity. It requires something other than the egoic action. No action in time can bring about a realization beingness is already beingness. I think all evidence proves that meditation is good for the mind. It quietens the mind, and a quiet mind tends to bring about less tension in the body. So there are benefits at the body-mind level, and that's good, obviously. If the human race was meditating, we would probably have a much more peaceful and more caring, more loving human race. But we're not talking about that when we talk about enlightenment. We're talking about something that's totally outside of that. Here there's no interest at all in meditation, because meditation is happening all the time, and there isn't somebody doing it. There is no technique or method going on here. There's just the seeing that everything that is being seen is a manifestation of the one that is seeing it. If we can call that meditation, there's no method. It just is the way it is. Now, you cannot reach that through effort. You cannot reach that through a method. Looking at the world and realizing the world is a manifestation of the one that is looking. Okay, if that is meditation, then meditation is happening.
So through meditation just happens.
True meditation, finally, is all there is. Waking, dreaming, sleeping, it's all just the one self, bringing all of that into play. And in those moments where one is conscious, there's just a clear seeing all the time that this is all there is. The nothing manifesting as everything. There is nobody witnessing, there is just witnessing happening. Any attempt to re-establish oneself in the witnessing position would be coming from the me concept again. There's any attempt to rest in the witnessing position, you're actually caught up in the mind games based on the concept that the me is actually a real thing, and now the me wants to be in the position of the witnessing. Now when the me, the mind of the me says, I really cannot do anything about this, there's a total relaxation, and then there's a waiting without waiting for anything, just resting in the moment, just being present to what is, noticing how all the wood has beautiful grain in it, how the bird's voice sounds more beautiful than before. You're present, you see, finally, without any effort. There isn't somebody there doing a method to be present. And suddenly, at some point in that, there's the opening again into the awakening. The mind itself must realise its own limitation, and it doesn't realise it through understanding. There's a giving up there, right there and then. There's a total relaxing of the mind. The seeking drops away there. When you're present to the present moment, the mind is the working mind. It's not the psychological mind. It's the mind that is functional and useful. It's not trying to get control. Well, the whole concept of being a person comes about because the mind constructs a structure which it claims to be a person. At the base of that structure is me. The me is not real from the beginning, so the structure is false, so the person is false, completely false. Now what happens is, in the effort to maintain that personal structure, the mind has to be active every single second of the day because that structure is constantly falling apart. So it has to be busy all day long restructuring itself to maintain its image of itself. So the me is always under threat. It's threatened in every circumstance. The total collapse of the concept of being a person would be the thing that would bring about mass enlightenment.
Which is the way, the best way to deal with fear?
What is very clear is that we experience fear to the same degree that we are ignorant about what we fear. That means that if we stay in the presence of the fear, what will arise out of that staying in the presence of fear is the intuitive understanding of what it is that we fear. Now, the moment we have intuitive understanding of fear, the fear has dissolved. It's become intuitive understanding. Now, of all the fears we have, the deepest fear, the root fear that we have, is the fear of death. If we intuitively understand what death is, and we can only do that by remaining in the presence of the action of dying, then we awaken to the realization that what we are is not an object that can die. That would be the end of the fear of death. At a physical level, you could continue to experience fear because that's part of the play of survival of the body. But psychological fear would completely disappear. So clearly, obviously, the answer is to stay attentively present to the feeling of fear. Allow it to unfold. Don't interfere with it, which initially, of course, the mind will try to do. I'm talking about staying with something without any intention for it to be other than what it is in that moment. And then it will unfold. It won't be guided by your intention. won't be guided by the mind. What you will find is that as it unfolds, the body and the mind actually benefit from it. They don't benefit from fear when they run away from fear, because that builds a fear about fear, and therefore you end up with a bigger sense of fear. When we claim to be a me, we are holding on to many fears, many fears. When the fear is felt, just allowed to be felt fully, there comes a moment where that particular fear melts away. What remains is what you really are. You're not a person, you're not something that can die. You're the eternal itself.